He never expected to see her again, especially not here, in this small, quiet diner at the edge of town. The place was nearly empty, just an old couple sipping coffee in the corner and a tired waitress wiping down the counter. He had stopped for a quick meal, something to fill his stomach before heading back to his lonely apartment. But then the bell above the door chimed, and his heart stopped. There she was. His ex-wife. The woman he hadn't seen in years. Time had been kind to her, she still carried herself with that quiet strength he remembered. But what caught him off guard wasn't just her presence. It was the 4 children with her. 4 little boys, all identical, all with the same dark curls and bright eyes. His breath hitched. 4. The number echoed in his mind. 4 years since the divorce. 4 children who looked no older than 3 or 4. A cold realization crept over him, but he pushed it away. It couldn't be. There had to be an explanation. She hadn't noticed him yet. She was too busy settling the boys into a booth, her voice soft as she hushed their excited chatter. He should have turned away, should have left before she saw him. But his feet wouldn't move. He just stared, his coffee forgotten, his chest tight with something he couldn't name. Then, as if sensing his gaze, she looked up. Their eyes met. For a second, the world stood still. Her face paled, her lips parting in shock. One of the boys tugged at her sleeve, breaking the spell. She quickly looked away, but the damage was done. He had seen it, the fear in her eyes. His hands clenched into fists. He needed answers. Now. Without thinking, he stood and walked toward her booth. She stiffened as he approached, her grip tightening around the menu. The boys stared up at him with curious eyes, eyes that looked painfully familiar. "Hey," he said, his voice rough. "Long time no see." She forced a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Yeah. Long time." Silence stretched between them. One of the boys giggled, kicking his feet under the table. The resemblance was undeniable. His stomach twisted. "These your kids?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. She hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah. They're mine." He swallowed hard, his next words sticking in his throat. "How old are they?" Her fingers trembled slightly before she tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "They just turned 4. 4. The word hit him like a punch to the gut. 4 years old. 4 years since their divorce. His mind raced, pieces clicking together in a way that made his blood run cold. He opened his mouth, but before he could speak, the oldest boy, at least, he assumed he was the oldest, grinned up at him. "Are you our daddy?" The air left his lungs. His ex-wife's face went white. "No, sweetheart," she said quickly, her voice strained. "This is just an old friend." But the boy kept staring, his head tilted. "You look like us." His heart pounded so loud he was sure the whole diner could hear it. He couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. The truth was right in front of him, staring back at him with 4 pairs of innocent eyes. And it shattered him. The words, "You look like us," hung in the air like a storm cloud. He couldn't move. Couldn't speak. His ex-wife's hands were now gripping the edge of the table, her knuckles white. The diner's hum, the clinking of plates, the low murmur of the old couple's conversation, faded into silence. All he could hear was the pounding of his own heart. One of the boys, the smallest, tilted his head. "Mama, why's he sad?" She flinched, then forced a smile. "He's not sad, baby. He's just thinking." Thinking. That was one way to put it. His mind was a whirlwind of memories, doubts, and a crushing sense of betrayal. Had she known? Had she kept this from him on purpose? The dates lined up too perfectly, 4 years since the divorce, 4-year-old boys. His boys. The oldest child, the one who had spoken first, slid out of the booth and stood in front of him, studying his face with an intensity that felt far too mature for a 4-year-old. "You do look like us," he repeated, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. He crouched down, his knees protesting, until he was eye level with the boy. Up close, the resemblance was even more undeniable, the same stubborn chin, the same slight curve at the tip of the nose. His throat tightened. "What's your name?" he asked softly. The boy grinned. "I'm the oldest. Mama calls me Bear because I growled when I was a baby." A weak laugh escaped him before he could stop it. Bear. Of course she'd pick a name like that. She'd always loved silly nicknames. The other boys, now sensing this might be a new game, scrambled to introduce themselves too. "I'm Fox," said the second, puffing out his chest. "Because he's sneaky," Bear added with a giggle. The third boy, quieter than the others, just held up a toy car. "I'm Bug." The smallest one, still half hiding behind his mother, peeked out. "And I'm Mouse." His chest ached. They were perfect. And they were his. His ex-wife cleared her throat, her voice strained. "Boys, sit down. Our food's coming soon." The children obeyed, though Bear kept stealing glances at him. He straightened up, his legs unsteady. He needed to say something. Do something. But what? "You didn't tell me," he whispered, low enough that the boys wouldn't hear. Her jaw tightened. "Not here." The waitress arrived then, balancing a tray of milkshakes and fries. The boys cheered, their earlier curiosity forgotten in the face of food. His ex-wife seized the distraction, handing out napkins and straws with practiced ease. He should leave. This wasn't his place. She clearly didn't want him here. But his feet refused to move. Bear, his mouth already smeared with chocolate, suddenly held out a fry. "You want one?" Something inside him cracked. He took the fry, nodding. "Thanks, Bear." The boy beamed, as if sharing food was the most natural thing in the world. Maybe, to him, it was. His ex-wife was watching him now, her expression unreadable. There was fear there, yes, but also something else, resignation? Sadness? He took a deep breath. "We need to talk." She closed her eyes for a second, then nodded. "Not in front of them. After they eat, then." She didn't agree, but she didn't say no either. For the next 20 minutes, he sat at the counter, pretending to drink his cold coffee while stealing glances at the booth. The boys laughed, argued over fries, and stole sips from each other's milkshakes, normal, happy kids. And he had missed everything. First steps. First words. Birthdays. Had she celebrated them alone? Had she ever thought about reaching out? When the meal was over, she herded the boys toward the restroom to wash their hands. On her way back, she paused near his seat, her voice barely above a whisper. "Wait outside. I'll meet you in 5. He didn't argue. The fresh air hit him like a slap as he stepped into the parking lot. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the pavement. 5 minutes. Then, maybe, he'd finally get the truth. The parking lot was quiet except for the distant hum of traffic. He leaned against his car, arms crossed, trying to steady his breathing. 5 minutes. That's all she'd asked for. But each second dragged like an hour. When the diner door finally creaked open, she stepped out alone, her shoulders tense. The boys must still be inside, probably with the waitress keeping an eye on them. She stopped a few feet away, not meeting his eyes. The streetlight flickered above them, casting shadows across her face. "You should have told me," he said, his voice rough. She flinched but didn't deny it. "I know." That was it. No excuses. No explanations. Just I know. The simplicity of it made his chest burn. "How could you keep this from me?" The words came out louder than he meant, edged with 4 years of hurt. "Those are my kids. I had a right to know." Her head snapped up then, eyes flashing. "You left. Remember? Papers signed, no calls, no looking back. What was I supposed to do? Track you down and say, 'Hey, guess what, you're a dad now'?" He opened his mouth, then shut it. She wasn't wrong. After the divorce, he'd shut down. Changed his number. Moved cities. He hadn't wanted reminders, hadn't wanted her. But this? This was different. "You found out after," he said slowly. "Didn't you?" Her anger flickered, replaced by something quieter. More tired. 2 weeks after the papers were final. "I thought it was stress at first. Then the doctor said." She trailed off, shaking her head. "I didn't even know how to process it myself, let alone tell you." The admission hit him like a punch. She'd been alone. Scared. Just like he'd been, but she'd had to face it without a choice. "And when they were born?" he asked, softer now. Her fingers twisted in the hem of her shirt. "I thought about it. 1,000 times. But you were gone. Really gone. And her voice cracked. "I didn't know if you'd even want them." The raw honesty in her words cut deeper than any accusation. Because she wasn't entirely wrong. The man he'd been back then? That guy wouldn't have wanted the responsibility. He'd been selfish. Angry at the world. But now? He looked past her, through the diner window. Bear had his face pressed to the glass, making silly faces. Fox was trying to climb onto the booth. Bug and Mouse were sharing a cookie, crumbs everywhere. His throat tightened. "I want them now." She studied his face, searching for something. Maybe the truth. Maybe a lie. Finally, she exhaled. "It's not that simple." "Why not?" "Because they don't know you. Because I've spent 4 years doing this alone, and I don't." Her voice wavered. "I don't know how to trust you with them." The word stung, but he couldn't blame her. He'd given her no reason to trust him. Not then. Not yet. Inside, Bear waved at him through the window. He forced himself to wave back. "Then let me prove it," he said, turning back to her. "Not for you. For them." She bit her lip, conflicted. A car passed by, its headlights sweeping over them. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, so quiet he almost missed it, "I can't just drop you into their lives. They're happy. They're safe. And I won't mess that up," he said. "But they deserve to know their dad. Even if it's just, little by little." She wiped at her eyes roughly. "I need time to think." It wasn't a yes. But it wasn't a no. The diner door burst open. Bear came running out, followed by Fox. "Mama." Bug spilled his milk. She turned automatically, catching Bear by the shoulder before he could dart into the parking lot. Okay. Let's clean it up." The boys stared up at him, curious. Bug and Mouse hovered in the doorway, watching. "You coming back in?" Fox asked, grinning. He glanced at her, waiting for a cue. A sign. She hesitated, then sighed. "You can help with the mess. Then you go." It was something. A start. As he followed them inside, Bear grabbed his hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. And for the first time in years, something inside him felt right. The milk spills were mopped up. The boys' sticky hands were wiped clean. And now, as the diner's evening crowd trickled in, he knew his time was up. She hadn't said it outright, but the way she kept glancing at the door made it clear, he was supposed to leave. But then Bear tugged his sleeve. "You gotta see our fort." Fox nodded eagerly. "It's the best fort. We made it last week." He hesitated, looking at her. Her lips pressed into a thin line, but the boys were already scrambling out of the booth, bouncing with excitement. "Please, Mama," Mouse whispered, his big eyes hopeful. Something in her expression softened. She let out a slow breath. "Fine. But just for a few minutes. And no climbing on the furniture this time." The boys hooped, grabbing his hands and pulling him toward the back of the diner where a cluster of chairs had been draped with blankets. It was lopsided, one side sagging where Bug had stacked too many napkins as walls. But to them, it was a castle. "This is the guard tower," Bear announced, pointing to a wobbly chair. "And this is where we keep the treasure." He held up a half-eaten cookie. Fox rolled his eyes. "That's not treasure, dummy. This is." He brandished a broken toy dinosaur. Bug, quiet as ever, just patted the spot next to him, an invitation. He crouched down, ducking under the blanket roof. The fort smelled like syrup and little kid sweat. Mouse immediately curled into his side, thumb in his mouth. His chest ached. How many moments like this had he missed? "Do you know any fort rules?" Bear demanded, hands on his hips. No shoes inside?" Fox gasped. "How'd you know?" A laugh bubbled up, unexpected. "Lucky guess." Out of the corner of his eye, he saw her watching from the booth, her face unreadable. 10 minutes later, the fort collapsed in a giggling heap of blankets and limbs. She finally stepped in. "Okay, that's enough. Time to go home." The boys groaned but didn't argue. As they gathered their backpacks, each a different animal, Bear's was, predictably, a bear, he stood awkwardly, unsure what to do. She hesitated, then said, "You can walk us to the car." It wasn't an invitation to follow them home. But it was more than he'd hoped for. The parking lot was darker now, the streetlights flickering on. The boys raced ahead, pretending to be pirates. "They like you," she said quietly. He shoved his hands in his pockets. "They don't even know me. Kids are smarter than we think." A silence stretched between them. Then, before he could stop himself, "Come to the park tomorrow. Let me spend an hour with them." "With you there?" She stiffened. "I don't know. 1 hour. That's all I'm asking." Mouse ran back then, clutching his stuffed rabbit. "Mama, can he come for pancakes?" Her resolve visibly crumbled. "We'll see." But as he watched them drive away, Bear's tiny hand waving from the window, he dared to hope. The park was louder than he remembered. Children shrieked on the swings, toddlers waddled after pigeons, and somewhere in the distance, an ice cream truck played a tinny melody. He stood near the entrance, shifting his weight from foot to foot. She'd said maybe, not yes. What if she changed her mind? Then he saw them. Bear spotted him first, breaking into a sprint. "You came." He crashed into his legs with the force of a tiny hurricane. Fox was right behind him, already demanding, "Do you know how to do monkey bars?" Bug and Mouse hung back, clutching their mother's hands. She looked exhausted, her sunglasses hiding dark circles. But she nodded at him, a silent "You get 1 hour." Bear grabbed his wrist. "Come on. We gotta show you the dragon slide." And just like that, he was pulled into their world. The next 40 minutes passed in a blur of laughter and scraped knees. Fox insisted on racing him across the playground, and sulked when he lost. Mouse, usually shy, giggled uncontrollably when he pretended to get stuck in a toddler swing. Even Bug spoke more than usual, whispering secrets about where the best ants lived. But it was Bear who surprised him most. As the others chased each other, Bear tugged him down to sit on the grass. "You're really our dad?" His breath caught. Yeah. I am. Bear nodded, solemn. Mama cried a lot when we asked about you. The words hit like a punch. Before he could respond, Fox barreled into them. Tag. You're it. And just like that, the moment was gone. She watched from a bench, her grip tight on her coffee cup. Every time one of the boys climbed too high or ran too far, her shoulders tensed. When Fox tripped and skinned his elbow, she was there in seconds, only to freeze when she saw him already comforting the boy. All good, champ, he murmured, brushing dirt off Fox's knee. Battle scar. Fox sniffled. Like a superhero? Exactly like that. She stepped back, something unreadable in her expression. When the hour was up, she checked her phone. Boys, time to go. The protests were immediate. 5 more minutes. We didn't show him the spider web. Bear crossed his arms. I'm not leaving. Her voice turned sharp. Now. The boys flinched. They'd never heard that tone before, desperate, fraying at the edges. Even Fox stopped arguing. As they gathered their toys, she pulled him aside. You're good with them. It wasn't a compliment. It was a confession. He kept his voice low. Let me do this again. Please. She looked past him, where Mouse was trying to lick his own elbow. Wednesday afternoons. While they're at daycare. We'll talk alone first. Then, softer, I need to know you're not going to vanish on them. The ice in his veins had nothing to do with the autumn wind. Because she wasn't just protecting them from a stranger. She was protecting them from him. The daycare parking lot smelled like chalk and disinfectant. He arrived early, pacing near his car until he saw her pull in. She stepped out wearing the same oversized sweater she'd always worn when stressed, the gray one with a coffee stain near the hem he'd never pointed out. You're here, she said flatly. You said Wednesday. A toddler shrieked with laughter inside the building. She flinched. Not here. Somewhere, quieter. They ended up at a bench by the duck pond 2 blocks away. The water was murky, littered with breadcrumbs. She sat as far from him as the bench allowed. For a long minute, the only sound was the quacking of mallards. Then she spoke, eyes fixed on the horizon. The night they were born, the power went out in the hospital. His fingers tightened around his coffee cup. Emergency generators kicked in, but for 3 minutes, it was just dark. Her voice was eerily calm. I held all 4 of them for the first time in that darkness. Couldn't see their faces. Just felt their weight. A pause. That's when I knew I couldn't do it alone. The confession hung between them. He'd imagined this moment 1,000 times, the big reveal, the shouting, the accusations. Not this quiet devastation. You should have called, he whispered. Her laugh was sharp. And said what? Remember me? The wife you couldn't wait to ditch? Surprise, we're parents now. She finally looked at him. You changed your number. Moved. You vanished. The truth of it burned. He had run. Not from fatherhood, from the wreckage of them. A duck waddled too close, hoping for crumbs. She kicked at it half-heartedly. I tried to hate you, she admitted. But they kept, looking like you. Especially Bear. Same scowl when he's thinking. The ghost of a smile touched his lips. Fox has your temper. Mouse has your sneezes. Bug has your silence, she finished softly. Another stretch of quiet. The ducks grew bored and paddled away. He took a shaky breath. After the divorce, I wasn't okay. She stiffened but didn't interrupt. I drank too much. Lost my job. Crashed on a buddy's couch for 6 months. The words tasted like ash. One night, I got so wasted I walked into traffic. Woke up in the ER with a cop telling me how lucky I was. His voice broke. That was the day they turned one. I didn't even know. Her breath hitched. For a terrible moment, he thought she'd walk away. Instead, she reached over, slow, hesitant, and covered his hand with hers. The contact was electric. For years of loneliness, and this was the first time either had touched the other without anger. Her fingers were icy. He turned his palm up to warm them without thinking, an old habit from when they'd walk winter streets together. She didn't pull away. A shout shattered the moment. "Mama!" They jerked apart. Bug stood 10 feet away, backpack slipping off one shoulder. How long had he been there? Her voice was too bright. "Sweetheart. What are you?" "Teacher said I had a fever." Bug shuffled closer, studying them with those two knowing eyes. "Why are you crying?" He touched his own face. "Wet." She wiped her cheeks hastily. "Just, grown-up stuff, baby." Bug considered this, then looked straight at him. "Did we make you sad too?" The world tilted. "No," he wanted to say. "You're the only thing that's made sense in years." But the words wouldn't come. She saved him. "Let's get you home, okay?" Standing, she hesitated. "You can, come. If you want." Bug slipped his tiny hand into his. And just like that, he crossed an invisible line. Bug's forehead burned against his palm. 102.3, she murmured, shaking the thermometer. The boys' shared bedroom was cluttered with dinosaur plushies and mismatched socks, the air thick with the scent of menthol rub. Mouse peered from his bunk, eyes glassy. "Is Bug gonna explode?" "No, baby. Just a little sick." She smoothed Bug's hair. "I'll make soup. I'll help." The words left his mouth before he could stop them. She paused, then nodded toward the doorway. "Kitchen's a disaster." It was. Cereal boxes toppled like dominoes, a tower of sippy cups teetered near the sink, and something green, hopefully avocado, was smeared across the fridge handle. "Home." He rolled up his sleeves. "Where's your ladle?" "Third drawer." "Maybe." They moved around each other in hesitant circles, him chopping celery while she stirred broth. The rhythm was still there, buried under years of hurt, the way she'd automatically reach where he'd just placed the pepper, how he'd step left to avoid her turning radius. Fox padded in, dragging a blanket. "Bear says fevers turn you into zombies." "Bear's full of it," she said, but her lips twitched. "Am not." Bear yelled from the living room. Fox grinned up at him. "Wanna see our Real fort?" "After soup," she said firmly. The next hour passed in a blur of spilled crackers and Disney movies playing too loud. Bug dozed on the couch, Mouse curled into his side like a kitten. Bear monopolized his lap, demanding elaborate explanations of how thermometers worked. "No, it doesn't suck out your brains." And she watched. Her gaze lingering every time one of the boys called him Dad by accident. The photo album surfaced after bedtime. "You should see this," she said quietly, pulling it from a high shelf. The cover left dust streaks on her sweater. He braced himself, for wedding pictures, for ultrasound scans he'd missed. But the first page held just 4 tiny footprints. "NICU records," she explained. They were so small. Her finger hovered over the smudged ink. Fox kept kicking the nurse. Page after page unfolded, first baths, first birthdays, Bear's infamous Great Escape from his crib. His throat tightened at a picture of all 4 piled on her lap, her smile exhausted but radiant. Then he saw it. Tucked in the back, a single photo of them, younger, dumber, his arms slung around her shoulders at some long-forgotten fairground. The corner was charred. She snapped the album shut. Old habit. Keeping one. The unspoken just in case hung between them. 3 a.m. found them in the kitchen again. Bug's fever had spiked, requiring cool cloths and whispered reassurances. Now they leaned against opposite counters, the only light coming from the microwave clock. He broke first. Do you ever? Every day, she whispered. The confession hovered in the dark. Outside, a car passed, painting her face in fleeting headlight gold. He took a step. Then another. Her breath hitched when he cupped her face, the same way he had when she'd cried over burnt cookies, back when forever felt possible. I'm sorry, he breathed. Her hands fisted in his shirt. Not pushing away. Holding on. Somewhere down the hall, a tiny voice called, Mama. She rested her forehead against his collarbone for one impossible second before pulling away. Coming, baby. But when she passed him, her pinky brushed his, a fleeting, fragile promise. Dawn light crept through the curtains as he blinked awake, stiff-necked and disoriented. The couch springs groaned under him. Somewhere in the night, they drifted, her head now pillowed against his shoulder, his arm curled protectively around her. And their hands? Still linked. A gasp came from the doorway. Bear stood frozen, cereal bowl clutched to his chest, milk dribbling onto his dinosaur pajamas. His whisper was deafening, you guys hugged. She jolted awake, scrambling upright so fast her elbow caught him in the ribs. We were just, it's not. Hugging. Bear crowed, already sprinting down the hall. Fox. Bug. Mama and Dad did a sleepy hug. The resulting stampede of small feet shook the apartment. Chaos ruled breakfast. Fox demanded to know if hugging meant they were getting remarried. Timmy's mom did that. Mouse kept giggling into his juice. Bug, fever gone, observed them with unsettling wisdom while constructing a pancake fortress. She hid behind her coffee mug, cheeks pink. It wasn't a hug. It was accidental proximity. Proxy what? Bear made a face. Gross. He bit back a laugh. This, the sticky syrup fingers, the too loud voices, her trying to glare while fighting a smile, this was everything he'd never known he needed. The daycare form sat innocently on the counter. Father's full name for records, ________________________________________________________________________________________________________________. His pen hovered. For years too late, but here. Present. She watched him fill it in, her breath catching when he didn't hesitate. Fox snatched the paper. Why's your name different from ours? A beat of silence. She answered carefully, because Mama was being stubborn. The boys found this hilarious. He found the lump in his throat unbearable. At the door, she pressed a key into his palm. For when you're ready. Not an invitation to move in. Not a promise of more. Just, a key. The metal was warm from her grip. Mouse hugged his legs. You're coming back, right? He knelt to meet their eyes, all 4 sets, so full of hope it hurt. Yeah, buddy. I'm coming back. Bear hooped, Fox demanded a pinky swear, Bug nodded solemnly. And she? She smiled. Just a little. Just enough.